when toxic things happen in the business, remembering why you have a business in the first place is a really good idea. And we had that business and it built it up. And I would say we had a problem that big because we took care of the clients. And short of that, if we stopped taking care of the clients and we focused in on the toxicity and all the distractions, we were going to lose that business for sure.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about high-performing culture. How do you lead a high-performing culture? Well, find out in this episode when we interview the CEO and founder of On-Call Compliance Solutions, Mike Frieder. Mike and I talk about a high-performing culture, not from a perspective that I've gone through before with others. So I really love the fact what he breaks down for you, what's really important about culture. And one of the things that I've noticed across many successful companies is the level of transparency. And so we'll dive into a little bit of that here today. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development for fast growth companies. Many of our companies have gone from 4 million to 10 million, or from 4 million to 20 million, or from 10 million to 100 million. And I share these with you not to brag, but like we work with fast growth companies. As they go through different levels of growth, they reach pain points. They reach places where there's people problems, and leadership is the only way through. In fact, Tough Conversations is a big part of that, which is the book I wrote earlier this year with my wife. And so I share all this with you today because it really is an important piece of your success. If you feel like you want to talk to someone about it, send me a quick email, gene@genehammett.com. I don't have fancy opt-ins for you or anything like that. But if you really think I can help you, or you just want some insight and I give you a plan so you can prioritize these things and really get clear about it, then reach out to me. I'm happy to help. If you're not ready for a conversation and you want to dip your toe into the work that we do, then you can join us for a coreelevation.com executive virtual conversation. Just go to coreelevation.com. You can register now. What's unique about this is that we invite CEOs of fast growth companies, people that have been on the show before, people that have not been on the show, but they're in that category, or they could be a client of mine. So you're going to have a small, intimate group of CEOs sharing about their perspective on these things, maybe even asking questions. And so you can get some insight, not just from me, but from other CEOs of fast growth companies. Just go to coreelevation.com and look at executive virtual conversations. Each month, the content changes. And so if it resonates with you, sign up. We'd love to have you there. Now on for the interview with Mike. Mike, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, sir. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Excited to have this interview with you on Grow Think Tank. And before we get started, I've already told our audience about you, but I'd love for you to tell us about your company, On-Call Compliance Solutions.
Sure, absolutely. So On-Call is a 21-year-old managed IT services business. We're actually a global company. And On-Call Compliance Solutions is the division that assists U.S. defense contractors in becoming compliant with information security laws, and then helping them go out and win defense contracts with higher profit margins and more chances of winning.
I'm kind of curious. I don't know. AI is kind of the buzzword of the decade, maybe. Are you guys leveraging that with your solutions?
Heavily, heavily. It's interesting in our industry. I think I was telling you earlier that we've got around 25 employees, probably about 10 contractors. We run the equivalent revenue for our industry of about 45 employees and probably about 20 contractors. So we leverage AI very heavily in the business to actually reduce headcount, streamline, and also, frankly, to boost productivity per head. So there's quite a bit that AI really helps us out with.
I'm in constant conversation with my own team, and I'm fascinated to see where other companies are going with AI, because I know it's not just about reduction of head time, but it's about getting things better, sharper, faster. And those that know how to leverage AI will probably win this race. Those that are resistant to it, I think, are going to be lagging and suffering.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. I think at the end of the day, it's like any other tool, right? So any other tool that can essentially make your team more efficient, make your company more profitable, why wouldn't you use that? Now, in our industry, it's a little bit sketchy because we deal with something called controlled unclassified information, and obviously in defense, there are some pieces of information that shouldn't be making its way out into the public. And one of the things we have to be careful about with our clients is making sure that client data or even defense data doesn't make it into some of these chat GPTs and other associated AI services. So in our industry, we do definitely have to kind of guide our clients and be a little bit careful. But for sure, in terms of at least the non-defense related aspects of business, it is silly not to use it.
Well, we didn't come here to talk about cybersecurity or AI, but we came here to talk about your leadership and really the people that have driven the success of your company over the last, few years. You had told me in our research, having a high performing culture was really kind of the central point of you guys being where you are today. Tell us a little bit more about your high performing culture.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting story with us. Back in about 2018, 19, I was in the state of Virginia and we had opened up our second office. We were more of a managed IT service provider back then versus a high-end compliance consultancy. And I had a gentleman that came to work for me, and he was a friend of mine in high school, lightly. And, I entrusted him to run my operation, and he did so really well for about 3.5 years. We grew, I think we tripled the size of the business during that period of time. And, I was on my way actually to Jacksonville, so to open up our third office at that time. And I got this strange phone call from someone in my office and said, "Hey, I'm quitting, but I think you ought to know why I'm quitting. I'm quitting because so and so person who I entrusted to run my operation was, basically really making a pretty hellish culture inside of our walls." And was screaming at people nonstop and just acting very differently than what I had experienced with this individual. And upon investigation, we looked into it. It took me about 18 hours to complete a solid investigation to determine that, in fact, the individual was going through a divorce, was going through some really nasty changes in his life, and had hidden all of that from me, and was having some financial problems that wound up apparently turning into some criminal acts. Frankly, he had started to create an LLC that was very similarly named to my company. He was taking leads and stealing them and basically closing clients under his own company name, and was actually going so maliciously far for some reason to attempt to actually steal clients or just disparage clients who wouldn't move over to his new contract in the local territory where he presided. So as soon as I figured out even half of that story, it was 18 hours. I basically drove over to that office, terminated him immediately, debriefed the entire staff on what was going on. And interestingly, I was having some very sleepless nights while that was going on, trying to figure out. At that time, I had twin 1 year olds, so I had three offices going. The company was not centrally located anywhere. We had clients all over the U.S., physical territories in three places. It was a mess. I was a new dad, very stressed out after a move to a city that I was not familiar with, and a company that appeared to kind of be blowing up around me as clients were slowly leaving. And I remember that I pulled my team aside and I didn't really know what to do. And my wife happens to have a PhD in business and organizational behavior, which is very fortunate for me. I've always been surrounded by a good team, and I think I probably married the best team member I could ever have. And she said, you don't have a culture at your company. Your company's always just simply been about it being an asset in your portfolio. You need a culture around this thing. And there are some just really good things that happened to me. But ultimately, I said, okay, well, if I'm going to have a culture, the first thing that matters is that we just have to get rid of all this toxicity in the company. And we just simply have to focus on taking care of the clients, because this is a business. These people pay us, and they pay us to take great care of them when it comes to the way we manage their technology. And so the first key principle of our culture wound up being, I don't want to hear about this guy ever again. There was just constant rumors and drama and stuff like that. Tallahassee's a small town. I said, I don't want to hear about anything but you guys taking amazing care of the clients. And if you come back in here tomorrow morning and you feel like you need to talk about this person or even say his name in our office walls, you can just leave. As a matter of fact, if I even hear it, you can just consider yourself fired. The only thing I want to hear about is that we had amazing client experiences from taking great care of those people. And that became the cornerstone of essentially the second part of our business, really, after that event. And so I think, at that point, the business wound up slowly turning around. And, we can get into some more of it later if you like. But, when toxic things happen in the business, remembering why you have a business in the first place is a really good idea. And we had that business and it built it up. And I would say we had a problem that big because we took care of the clients. And short of that, if we stopped taking care of the clients and we focused in on the toxicity and all the distractions, we were going to lose that business for sure.
I love the story of removing toxicity because I've seen it happen so much as a coach of fast growing companies. Someone might even be a high performer, what you described as someone who used to be a high performer who fell on some hard times for whatever reason, was malicious about this. But when you look back on that now, did you realize that the removing that person was such a critical element to the success of your business? Regardless, I mean, he was trying to steal clients. So barring that little asterisk there.
Yeah, and it's the hardest thing because usually the most toxic are really excellent salespeople, right? That is right. I see you shaking your head, yes, and the reality is that is the toughest part. And for a long time, I made that mistake of putting the salespeople on a pedestal. It's probably my own doing that the culture became how it was because one, he was operationally running it, and two, he was effectively the territory manager doing the sales for that region, which was our biggest region because I built it up. Yeah, that's exactly right. I love, the book that you've written, because the book is really, if you're going to own a business, tough conversations are not only inevitable, but you want to dive into them head first. Because the minute you detect that a conversation even feels a little bit yucky or a little bit tough, it's probably tough because it needed to be had before, right? That's kind of where that feeling really ultimately comes from. And the reality for that situation was, yeah, we had another key employee that had been with us for 8 years that left, but when she left, she didn't offer any reason that she left other than, she was having a baby at the time and just wanted, a change of pace. And she covered up the real reason that she left. There's no doubt in my mind. But you have to be ready at all times, no matter what level of inconvenience it is, that when that icky feeling comes up that there's about to be a tough conversation going on, boy, you just got to dive into it because it's probably covering up either some kind of toxicity or some sort of major stumbling block that you're about to go through. And the sooner you have that conversation, well, the smaller the magnitude of the conversation really is compared to what it can be if you let it fester.
Now, Mike just mentioned and told his story about a toxic employee. Now, I've been sitting in this chair for more than 12 years, helping companies grow, helping them address the people problems. And I've noticed this every time. A toxic employee is usually there way too long. So that's number one. You want to make sure that you can identify these things. And if you need to, have the tough conversations you need to early and often. And so that you can get a feel for, is this person going to make the change to improve, or are they going to cause more problems? What I've noticed is most toxic people don't want to change. They think that they're good. They think that they're doing the right thing. But we know that just because you're a high performer doesn't mean you're good for the culture. I say that with a little bit of a smile because I know the back end of this. Every time one of my clients, hundreds of clients on the Inc. 5000, has exited a toxic employee, their business has improved drastically. Not just a small bit. People come to them and say, why'd you wait so long? Or what happened here? Why, what's going on, in a good way, because they're so happy that the toxicity has been removed. I remember one client specifically that had a problem with someone. Three of the managers did not want to be promoted because they were afraid of being bullied by the toxic person. Now, once we got that person out, the company was able to soar, and hopefully the same thing would happen to you if you exited a toxic employee. Back to the interview with Mike. Well said, Mike. No plug needed on the book, but I do appreciate that. When you look at your high performing culture now, so fast forward to a few years, what do you think really keeps you guys keeping the kind of culture that you really know drives success?
Yeah, I think it's drinking the Kool-Aid, James. I think that's really what it boils down to. So the first thing is culture has to come from the top down, right? So as the CEO and president of the company, I drink my own Kool-Aid. The first thing anyone that walks into our doors as a new employee does is they go through a video of me talking about our company culture. And that company culture covers all of the core cultural points, things like customer first, things like the idea that you're here to serve your country because what our company does is we defend U.S. defense contractors from information security threats, and we help them thrive by winning new and bigger defense contracts. So for us, I think it's easy because the mission is absolutely crystal clear. And then at least once a week in a meeting with really, throughout the week, I have meetings with almost all employees, certainly at the managerial level. I look to the culture and the key points within that culture statement to bounce ideas off of. So if there's something going on with a client, I will make it a conscious effort to pull that KPI from the culture statement into that conversation. And so it's the reinforcement of not just myself, but my management team. Because to tell you the truth, Gene, I really don't do much in day-to-day operations anymore. The company is pretty self-sufficient when it comes to operating. But they understand, and I understand that so long as we lead with culture first, everything else will fall into place. And what that means is it's from, the meetings that we have every day to the things that we say and practice with our clients to the role playing that we do in sales. Every aspect of that is about our culture and who we are as a company who cares a lot more about protecting the country and helping our clients thrive in the world of defense than anything else.
Mike, you had mentioned to me before we actually hit the recorder on another element of this, and I just want to bring it forward: transparency. I think a lot of leaders feel like they're transparent enough. They feel like they're transparent around most things, but you're pretty remarkable in your level of transparency when it comes to probably financials and other aspects of the business. How is that helping you create that high performing culture?
Yeah, so I think that there's two aspects of it. Number one is you don't have to have big steering inputs when you want to accomplish things. Now, I race cars. That's one of my favorite hobbies. And if you want to go fast in a car, one of the things you begin to realize is the bigger the steering input, the slower you're going to go around the turn. And companies are the exact same thing. When you have to have massive directional shift in a company, it takes a lot of effort for people, especially employees, to really wrap their head around things are going to be different. But when people understand the transparency about what's going on, they see the reason that the turn is coming up, right? They can see the turn coming and they can get set up for that turn because they knew it was coming before it got there. And that's a huge part of what we do. And when I say transparency, I mean you can ask the person that answers the phones, and they will be able to tell you that we did $2.6 million in EBITDA last year. They'll be able to tell you those things because we go over it every single week. And they'll be able to tell you that we're 5% or 10% above goal this month. They'll be able to tell you everything that goes on because we don't really look at knowledge as something that should be limited outside of the security parameters that our clients put on us for defense related work. But in terms of how we run the company, it's crystal clear. Our pay scales are transparent. And by the way, interestingly, our pay scales are uniform across job position, which is a whole nother topic we could get into. If you want to make more money with us, it's simple. There's 5 different certifications that you can get, each of which carries a pay scale change. And as far as I'm concerned, if you want to make more money, that's on you. You don't have to ask for a raise, which is interesting too. We have almost no turnover in the company in the last 5 years. Radical transparency changed our ability to not just recruit better team members, but to retain team members. I mean, I had people who will come into our meetings and literally say, look, you're going to have to carry me out of here on a bodyboard before I'd quit this place. And the reason is because there's never a question about what are they going to get paid? How do I get a raise? There's never a question about why am I here, right? Back to Simon Sinek. That is all over our company walls, right? There's never a question about what it is you came into work to do this morning because you know how to better yourself. You know the next 3 different positions you can hold. All of those things are absolutely mapped out in written standard operating procedures and formats that people have universal access to in our company. And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, you know what? When you come to work and you don't have a question about what it takes to be a high performer, the high performers will self-identify. The people who are not high performers, they'll self-identify, right? They won't make the moves. And it's really easy to run an incredibly high performing team when everybody knows the same set of rules and there is zero transparency difference between management, line staff, and senior leaders.
Mike's been talking about the power of transparency. I know a lot of people are divided on this. What I'd like to think about is your transparency line. The line is where you personally think that you should share. That's on the side that you want to share with your employees. And then there's the things you don't want to share. Now, the more remarkable your level of transparency or your line of transparency is toward, there's fewer things that you don't want to share. Like I may not talk about my sex life with my wife. I may not talk about, a strategic initiative until it's really baked in with my team. But I will talk about revenues. I will talk about profitability. I will talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I have a fairly remarkable sense of transparency. Now, only you can decide what your line of transparency is. But I would urge you, because I've seen this with so many fast growth companies, that the more closer that is to being more transparent, remarkably transparent even, the more likely your company is to provide the level of success and growth and overcome the challenges that you currently have. Because what I know for sure, and I've asked this with hundreds of people, when you share more than you feel comfortable with, it's uneasy, but the employees that are really meant to be there, they will rally for you. They won't use it against you. They won't use it to go look for another job. They will rally together. And that is what you want in your culture. Today, we're talking about a high-performing culture. Transparency is a big part of that. Back to our interview with Mike. I find the same thing. I've done so many interviews with people just like you, growing fast, low turnover. The common element, great culture, but inside that is a level of transparency that is what I would call remarkable, much more than what most people are comfortable with doing. But that's what has really positioned success for a lot of these companies. Mike, we're running out of time here, but there's one more question that's aching to come out. You have been talking about mission-driven company, talking about your high-performance culture. You haven't mentioned the word values. I would imagine that you are very clear about what the values are of the organization. Everyone else in the company is clear about those values. You live by them every chance you can. And I could be completely wrong. What is your perspective on values as it relates to your high-performing culture?
Yeah, I think for me, the values are baked into the culture. The values that we espouse are things like honesty and transparency. We're in a technology-based company. It would be easy to sell clients things they don't need in my business. Some of the lawmakers that made the laws don't even really fully understand the implications of the laws that they've made and how they should be implemented inside of a real business. And there is an infinite number of ways to just simply do the wrong thing. But I think that when you have your values in the right place, client first, give them what they really need. I think, again, even to go a step further, one of the things that has made our business absolutely explode is that we took something that is absolutely difficult to do. I mean, it takes the average company anywhere between 6 and 24 months to do, and we built a system for getting it done in 2 to 3 days and then ensuring success afterwards. It would be easy for me to charge an infinite amount of money to go through and take them on a 6 to 24-month journey to accomplish what ultimately can be done in a couple of days. Very easy. My competitors do it left and right. There's a lot of things that we could be doing, but instead we choose actively to do the right things. And I'll tell you that by making efficient, cost-effective solutions, which, by the way, does not have anything to do with the level of profitability. I can assure you our profitability is very, very good. Probably some of the best first off, we grew out of being a managed IT service provider by the idea that we essentially have over a 35% gross profit margin, net profit margin, actually, to the bottom line, which is really wild for our industry. It's usually 12 to 17%. We're at 35% and growing. You don't do those kinds of things and give people on your line to love you without having the values in the right place. And what we value is a fair relationship with our clients. At the end of the day, I think those are things that every business owner really has to take some time to consider. At the same time, I also think business owners should not take an overwhelming amount of time to consider values. I think values are things that don't have to be figured out on day one. I think they're important, but I think value should come out of what evolves to be a business that helps people, right? And when you've established fair value when it comes to price, but I think that values are something that over time are better developed because they will change over time. They will change.
Well said, Mike. Thanks for being here, being a part of the podcast, sharing your wisdom about high-performing cultures. And I really just think that this has been an incredible conversation.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Gene. Happy to do it.
Wow, Mike had an incredible interview with me, and I really appreciate him talking about a high-performing culture. Hopefully you understand this. I mean, toxicity can kill any culture, successive company. And the story he shared with us was just phenomenal from a perspective of lessons learned, and his ability to address that and grow beyond it has been incredible. So hopefully you enjoyed all of the aspects of Mike's interview today on the show. We do executive coaching, leadership development, and if we can help you in any way, make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. Love to serve you. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, live with courage. We'll see you next time.